had private confidential tax information leaked, and conservative groups were systematically targeted by the IRS.
That's a scandal that's clearly worth getting angry about. Congress, in its wisdom, has decided that if you give money to an advocacy group, you don't get a tax deduction if the group spends more than 50% of its money on political activity. This spring, we learned that the IRS selected 500 conservative and Tea Party groups for extra scrutiny. Agents were told, be on the lookout for words like liberty, patriot, constitution. Of all words. IRS bureaucrats then denied tax deductions to Tea Party groups for more than a year and harassed them with question after question, and in a few cases leaked their donor lists, sometimes leaked them to left-wing groups. That is despicable. This is just raw political abuse. Brooke Rollins runs one group that was abused, the Texas Public Policy Foundation. So what happened to you guys?
Well, John, what happened to us in the spring of last year, 2012, our donor list, and as a 501c3 charitable organization, which is what our organization is, we have to file with the IRS a list of our larger donors. But as you know, that list is supposed to remain anonymous, and the IRS in return promises to black out every name before it releases that information about the organization.
And why should it be anonymous? People say if you give to a political cause, you ought to be known.
Well, this goes back to the founding of our country, in my opinion. The right to associate and to engage is inherent in a democracy and a free
Well, you have a right to
system.
associate. You just have to be public about it.
Well, let's go back to the civil rights movement. Back in Alabama versus the NAACP, the state of Alabama tried to force the NAACP during the civil rights era to disclose their donors. And as we all know, why would they do that? Well, they would do that because they think they could threaten those people and not to give money anymore, or coerce, you know, the givers of the NAACP to back down. And they knew that the current state of affairs in Alabama was going to change unless they were able to undercut or dilute the NAACP's power and what they were trying to do. So the U.S. Supreme Court said, absolutely not. We have rights as Americans to remain anonymous when we support those whose ideas we believe in.
And likewise, your donors know that, gee, if my name is publicized, maybe I'll be harassed the way the Koch brothers are.
That's exactly right. And not surprisingly, the Koch brothers were on our list, as well as many other great Americans and entrepreneurs. And when the left seized control of this list and wrote about it in a lot of their magazines, their blogs, their websites, that harassment started to come about. So absolutely.
Then there's that targeting. This didn't happen to you. You already have a tax-exempt status. This happened to others. And at first, the IRS commissioner said, oh, there's no targeting. And then a year later, Lois Lerner revealed the truth in response to a question that she planted. An IRS commissioner then said, well, mistakes were made by people trying to be more efficient in their workload. That's all. If you say Tea Party or Patriot, they know you're an advocacy group. They were just doing their job.
That's what they're saying. What is amazing, and the news stories today or since yesterday are that, but wait, the report from the IRS, we had progressives in our list of targets
this week,
too.
that was released.
This just happened, and oh my goodness, so we weren't really targeting conservatives, we were targeting everybody.
What about that?
John, have you seen one progressive group step forward and say, we were harassed? Have you seen one progressive group say, wait a minute, IRS, you delayed us for 2 years, you made us produce 23,000 pages of documents, which one of these groups had to produce in their quest to become a C4? We haven't seen any of that. When Big Brother gets so big that they have to know everything about you to be able to give you everything you want, that begins the ruin of our country. And I think that's the crossroads where we are right now, and that's why this show is so important and why your viewers must understand what's at stake here.
And when government is so big and you want the tax deduction, you have to give them all this information.
That's exactly right.
You know, when they say targeting people, it doesn't live until you mentioned the 23 pages of documents that the Leadership Institute had to provide.
23,000 pages. That's right.
The Coalition for Life of Iowa was asked, explain in detail the activity at prayer meetings. Provide the percentage of time your group spends on prayer groups compared with other activities. And one group, the American Patriots Against Government Excess, I like that name, was required to provide a synopsis of every book read. The president of the group said, gee, I thought I don't have time to provide a book report. You can read them for yourself. She sent them to them and included a copy of the Constitution.
Right, which is great. But it goes to the bigger point that what is happening here must stop. When government gets so big, this is what happens, and this is why we have to stand up and say no.
And it's striking how some on the left don't see any problem with what the IRS did. Here's the former head of the tax division.
I couldn't find anything that suggested the IRS had acted inappropriately. Acted perhaps ineffectively in a couple of places, but not inappropriately.
I haven't seen what they did wrong. They are supposed to evaluate how much political activity a 501c4 wants to engage in.
No problems.
No problems. It's all just fine. You know, the fact that those guys can stand up and say that to me is astonishing. But it also, in my opinion, gives such great opportunity for the people of this country to stand up and say no more. No more.